Coming up on this week's podcast, the final countdown begins in the F1 title fight. Max Verstappen looks for a fourth home win. Lewis Hamilton to face the media for the first time since his staggering Hungary comments. And Cadillac complete its 2026 driver pairing. It's time for the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast, looking ahead to the return of F1 following the summer break at this weekend's Dutch Grand Prix. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined solely by, he's back, the one, the only, the almighty legend, that is lead editor Ian Park. Sam, he is back. Sam will be back with us next week. He's currently enjoying a couple of days away. Ian, welcome back, my friend. Long time no see. As our viewers know, you've been enjoying a bit of time away during the summer break. And, well, a lot has happened during that time because we've surpassed 1 million downloads. So we finally hit that big milestone. We obviously...
Go us.
Go us, we're smashing it. We obviously understand at Racing News 365 that Cadillac had its driver pairing. We'll discuss that a bit later on. But overall, how are you and how was your holiday?
I'm good, mate. Feeling refreshed. As anybody that's on the video, as you commented before we actually started this podcast, said, "You look, blimey, mate, you look really well tanned." And tell you what, it's been the best 2 weeks because we go to the same place every year, simply because my wife's parents live in the region down in southwest France, and it's on the Atlantic coast, so you can never be quite guaranteed of what weather you're going to get. But we probably had the best 2 weeks of weather that we've had ever since we've been going there, and we're looking about the last 13, 14 years now, I think, that we've been going to pretty much the same part of that world for our summer holidays. So yeah, really, really, really good. Good to be back. Good to see the numbers are doing well. Good to see that we've smashed 1 million podcast listens. So thank you ever so much to every single one of you that's enjoyed listening to these. We hope we're keeping you entertained. Onwards and upwards. Next mark, 2 million.
Right. Hopefully it won't be too far away. It's funny you mentioned the weather because I feel that's going to be quite a big topic in this podcast. Because for those who have seen the forecast for Zandvoort, it's looking rather, well, wet. But before we get on to discussing the Dutch Grand Prix, we've got to start, and you've been away, so we need to get you thinking again. We've got to start with a fun question, which is, how many countries to have hosted Formula One have had a home driver win the race? So, for example, Germany will be one, because obviously a German driver has won the German Grand Prix. There's a reason I'm asking this. So how many do you think?
Is it something to do with Max winning the Dutch Grand Prix?
Well, yes.
Okay.
So there's another one. They're on two.
So just countries. So obviously, yes, we've had multiple British winners, obviously.
Exactly.
So we're talking countries. Wow, geez. And we've had about 1,200 Grand Prix, haven't we, or something along those lines. So how many countries would have F1 visited over the years? I'm going to say 33, just as a top of the head.
Wow. It's 12, believe it or not. So only 12 countries, only 12 countries, only 12 countries have had a driver from that nation win the home race. So Max Verstappen obviously became the first ever Dutchman to win the Dutch Grand Prix back in 2021. That is the most recent country to have joined this list. The one before that was Spain back in 2006 after Fernando Alonso won the Spanish Grand Prix. So it's not something which happens very often, it would seem. Of course, we need F1 now to go to some new countries to try and add to this list. So yeah, I thought it was quite a cool question. So you're thinking again.
Have you got all the countries? Have you rattled off the countries?
I don't. In hindsight, that would have been that would have been,
mate. Sorry, yeah,
that would have been smart in hindsight. Maybe I'll do that for next week, and I'll get Sam to name all 12. Anyways, let's move things on, because obviously we had Fergal Walsh, Racing News 365's favourite Irishman. He did brilliantly. He obviously stood in for you last week, but I asked them, Sam and Fergal, last week, given we had nothing to take away from, because, well, there's been no races to look back on, to look ahead to what's the biggest thing they're looking forward to from the final 10 rounds. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Mr. Parks, what is the biggest thing you are looking forward to from the final 10 races of the season?
I think it's obviously got to be the Lando Oscar dynamic, the head-to-head, because naturally, unfortunately, in lots of respects, of course, we don't have the McLaren drivers fighting against a Max or a Lewis or a Charles, etc., etc. So really now it's boiling down to this Oscar Lando battle. How's that going to play out? How's the dynamic between them going to play out? Because as we've discussed previously, they've been really nice and kind to one another and playing it, relatively safe, apart from Lando, of course, going into the back of Oscar in the Canadian Grand Prix. But that always came out in the wash. Lando held his hands up, and rightly so, because that was an obvious Lando error. It wasn't as if they were going wheel banging against one another through a tight chicane or a corner or whatever. That was a genuine, honest mistake from Lando. He tried to go for an overtake, tried to go for a gap, but on this occasion, literally wasn't there, and it didn't work. So, right, Lando held his hands up, but it's so close between them now, and it's really going to boil down, as to how they play it out between themselves, as to, particularly when we get towards the end of the season, if it's still really, really tight going into that, triple header right at the end of Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, our nerves going to play a part on either side. Who's going to be able to remain composed? Who's going to be able to cope with that additional pressure? Because at the end of the day, this is both of them genuinely going for their first world title. Yes, okay, we bigged up Lando last season on, trying to rev that title battle up as much as we could. We tried to give it the hard sell, but it was never quite there between Lando and Max last season. And Max always just had that little bit extra, didn't he? Going above and beyond the limit of his car on many occasions to ultimately pull out his fourth consecutive world title. On this occasion, this is Lando really thoroughly in the mix. Oscar, of course, going for it as well, first time. So as I say, it's going to really come down to who's got the biggest pair of cojones, as the phrase goes, isn't it? And once we really get down to that sharp end of the season and we go into those last three races, as I mentioned, should it still be as close as it is now?
I think there's so many things though from these final 10 races to look forward to. Also, the title
Mm,
fight being one of them. There's also how's Lewis going to respond to a pretty
exactly. We
dire
did that
start.
in my last
Yeah, which is
podcast
a
before I
massive
went
one.
away on holiday. Touched on
Yeah.
that a lot. And that is really huge. I said it previously, massive, massive 10 Grand Prix for Lewis, massive second half of the season. Monza especially, and I know we're going to touch on that a little bit.
Yes.
The fans are going to come out in force. They're going to be behind him. They're going to want him to do well. But yeah, it's a big, big 10 Grand Prix for Lewis. How's he going to come out of it? The summer break I'm referring to, because he said he's going to analyze it. There's going to be a lot of tears. You've got to hope, excuse me, you got to hope that he will also come back as refreshed as I feel right now and really want to smash it for this second half of the season, get on top of things and show us why Ferrari has invested in him as much as he wants to prove himself at Ferrari.
I'm trying to think what I went for last week. I think I went for the rookies and the fact that this season so far we had Kimi Antonelli come out of the blocks, firing all cylinders at the
Mm,
start of the year. Then all of a sudden, as Isaac Hadjar kind of became, the best rookie across, the second half of the first part of the season. Then Gabriel Bortoleto ended before the summer break in
brilliantly.
remarkable
Yeah.
form. What's going to happen in these final 10 races, particularly as we get into the South Asian, the Middle Eastern, the Asian races, the American races, should I say, venues they've not been to before, or also they've not raced, which I think is going to be really interesting and a very telling part of which rookie ultimately is going to come out on top because I can't call that one right now. But anyways, let's get on to our first big talking point because we have got 10 races remaining across a 15-week time period. If the first 14 are anything to go by, these 10 are
15
going
weeks.
to
Jeez. Wow.
15 weeks, 10 races. But if these, the first 14 are anything to go by, these 15 weeks are going to go. It feels crazy how quickly these 14 have gone. These 10 are going to
Yeah.
go in a flash. The big talking point between Oscar and Lando when speaking to written media and broadcasters, when they've been asked what's going to make the difference this season, who's going to win the title, what's going to have to happen, rather than saying it'll be the fastest driver who wins, they've often said it'll be the driver who makes the least
That's the least
mistakes.
mistakes. Yeah.
As we have spoken and hinted at already in this podcast, Zandvoort is expected to be very very wet this weekend. Literally, as the current forecast shows, every single session from Friday through to the end of Sunday is going to be wet.
Jeez.
So when we
Glad I'm
talk
not there
about
this
though,
weekend.
well, exactly this, but when we talk about other factors of, they both pointed out how crucial it is to not make mistakes. That's going to make the difference. Coming out of the summer with all the drivers refreshed, a bit of time out of the car, a very wet weekend in the Dutch Grand Prix. Would you imagine that's probably the last thing they'd want? This could be a big test right from the get-go. And what is the final countdown, really?
Yeah, it's, I mean, I didn't know until you told me before we came on air here, Nick, that it was going to be a completely
It's going to be
wet
wet.
weekend. And you actually even mentioned to me that the local people there have already turned around and said, we could even stretch it into Monday. But that's okay. We've got back to back in Europe, but even so, that would make it really, really tough.
It would need to be
It,
extreme for that to
it
happen.
would be absolutely
Yeah.
extreme. I don't know how the FIA and F1 would work it, but yeah, let's cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll see what happens across the weekend. But yes, a wet Zandvoort, my word. And just in case people are wondering, with regard to my earlier comment when I said I won't be there this weekend, I'm not there in person. Just to reiterate, folks, anybody might be new listening or might not have heard me say this previously, I don't attend every single Grand Prix across the course of the season. My team obviously need to take a weekend off on occasion, and when they do have a weekend off, that's when I step back from attending a Grand Prix and I'm actually at home covering the event. So this weekend, it's everybody's favorite Irishman, Fergal Walsh, that is having a weekend off. So I'm at home this weekend, effectively backstopping, but not quite. I'm really, properly part of the team this weekend, sitting at home and catching all the stuff off the television as we often do. I mean, I tell you what, folks, you might not realize it as well, but just to add, even in a media center, all we have is a bank of TV screens. So just give it a little bit of insight here, because some people may not appreciate just what it is as F1 media we see or do when we're actually live and in attendance in a paddock. But yeah, we have a media center and we have a row of TV screens, and we have basically 4 TV screens. We have 2 that show live event, 1 that's showing live timing, and 1 that's showing live updates in terms of race penalties, weather forecasts, etc., and all that kind of stuff. So, but we have no commentary. That's the strangest thing. We are sitting watching screens in silence. So more often than not, I've actually got my earbuds in, as you can see, if anybody watching, and I'm listening to the Sky feed still, because you get a great deal of information, in fair play to the Sky guys, that you do not get whilst just simply staring at a TV screen with no noise or no feed to help you at least analyze what you're seeing with the times and with the pictures. So again, just a little bit of background, just thought I'd throw that in there. It's just me and you, Nick, just to help people understand a little bit as to what it's like being an on-site representative of the Formula One media. But anyway, going back to the point you've mentioned, yes, back to Lando and Oscar and the guy that makes the least mistakes, because we've seen that more often than not over the course of this season, and with Lando in particular, that whenever he makes a mistake, it has more often than not proven quite costly. We've already said that mistake in, I remember saying this in the podcast just before I went away on holiday, that mistake in Canada, if he hadn't have made it, and Oscar and Lando, who were fighting for 4th and 5th positions at that particular point, had retained those positions to the checkered flag, then Lando would be 1 point behind Oscar in the driver's standings. So that just goes to show how costly a mistake that could very well be by the end of the season. But yes, Lando was, at least for me, I got the impression that Hungary and Belgium in particular, he really knuckled down and tried to take more accountability, take a greater control of himself, and really tried to minimize his mistakes as much as possible compared to what we've seen. So maybe we might see a slightly more, for want of a better phrase, on top of things Lando Norris going into this second part of the season after this summer break now. And that could really stir up that title fight even more if Lando really manages to bite down hard on those mistakes that he has made, and he manages to limit them even more so than we've seen previously, and that could really test Oscar's mettle, because I think Oscar's performed brilliantly so far. He has been, as we've again discussed, the more composed of the two, the less fragile, shall we say, of the two compared to Lando on occasion. But it's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch, and it's just to reiterate the phrase of those two guys. It's not so much who's got the speed, who's got the performance over the given weekend, because they've both got it. They've both got the car in a place where they like it. It's now going to be about the guy that manages to keep it clean the most often across the entire course of a weekend, and in particular, quite naturally, in qualifying and the Grand Prix. And I'm sure you must think that's going to be the same, Nick.
There's definitely an argument, I think, that actually, in many ways, Lando's mistake in Canada, it appears has actually settled him, given that he's now won, 3 of the last 4 races. If anything comes into the final 10 races, whilst he's 9 points behind Oscar, arguably with the momentum behind him, because Oscar obviously is, not being able to taste victory as often as he had done in the start of the season. So I think that's an interesting thing to watch. And as we know as well, looking back at last year's Dutch Grand Prix, Lando was very, very good at Zandvoort, obviously made a
He
poor
likes
start
that.
last year. He likes that,
Yeah.
made a poor start last year, but quickly caught back to Max, overtook him, and went on to win by a country mile. Of course, if it's dry, you'd imagine a McLaren 1-2 is pretty much confirmed, unless they were to collide, hit each other, whatnot, have a technical issue. The fact it looks like it's going to be wet, and at the moment, from the looks of it, I think a dry race would be the biggest surprise of the weekend in general. Who do you think could get amongst the McLarens? Because as we've seen, particularly when you compare Spa and Silverstone, the Ferraris, for example, really struggled in the wet in Silverstone, yet in Spa, Lewis had seemingly the best wet pace. It's been interesting that teams haven't necessarily, yeah, their performances are varied in similar conditions. It just depends on the circuit. So with that in mind, who do you think could, if it is wet, and like I said, a few times looks like it's pretty much going to be from start to finish, who do you favour to maybe get amongst the McLarens and disrupt the title fight?
I think you've got to obviously go with Max, home hero,
Home
crowd
hero.
favorite. The majority of that crowd, the overwhelming majority of that crowd, seas of orange. We know what a party atmosphere those guys are going to create. Even if it's wet, they'll still be
Yeah.
pumping out that Euro music, mate, that they love so much, and giving it their all. And they create a great atmosphere. It's going to be a great miss when we lose Zandvoort, for lots of different reasons. I think it's been a great addition to the calendar over these past few years. So I know we've still got this year and next, but yeah, I do feel the Dutch Grand Prix has been a great addition, and as I say, for me, it's going to be a loss when it goes, um, simply because of everything that just goes around that weekend, in terms of the fans and what they do for that event. But so for me, absolutely, getting back to your original question again, you've got to throw Max in there. As you
Yeah.
mentioned, how the Ferrari is going to come out of this break now, where, as you mentioned, that good wet pace from Lewis that we've seen most recently. Can he now, and as we touched on just, before this, can he now turn a corner for Ferrari? And he's going to want to do that. He's going to want to prove himself. He knows he has to prove himself. This is not the Lewis that we know. Okay, we've discussed his issues at Mercedes in the past for the previous 3 seasons. This car has not been to his liking, and I've said more often than not that this season for Lewis is the one to embed himself in the team, get to know the processes, the people, the ways of working, to have a real pop next year when the regulations change, when hopefully for him and the team, the car will be more to his liking, and he's able to really prove himself once again that he is one of the greatest of all time. So he's won 7 world titles, so you can't dispute that at the end of the day. But he's going through this period, this quite lengthy period now, ever since he missed out to Max, going for that 8th. He's had this period now where it's been a real struggle for him, as we all know. But then we had this huge fanfare and hurrah about joining Ferrari. he got that win in that sprint in China, and we thought that was a moment where, yes, Lewis is here, he's back, but it's just not really happening for him. And he knows that. He knows it's not happening for him. And it's going to have to be a real crunch time this second half of the season. So if it's wet, I do see Lewis being there or thereabouts to give, not quite still on the pace of the McLarens, because I do think they've got the edge in all conditions, all circuits, as they've proven. But nevertheless, it will be a good opportunity for him to shine. Charles, of course, should be up there as well. And beyond that, who are we looking at? It's a tough one.
George Russell?
I think you got to put George in the mix. George has really shone this season for me. He's had a really good season.
Yeah.
And we're still waiting for those contract announcements, aren't we?
Well, Sam made a very good prediction, actually. He wonders if Mercedes is waiting for Monza next weekend, being obviously Kimi's home race. He wonders if maybe
as
Monza
they did last year.
As they did last year. That's his prediction. So that's
now I've got something. Is a good point.
Here we go.
I remember very early on in the season when Toto Wolff was in the FIA press conference on a Friday. I can't remember which circuit it was. It was very early on, and even then there were people talking about the fact that George and Kimi had only been given 1-year contracts. And I said to Toto, I said, surely you're not going to leave it as long as you did last year and wait until the Italian Grand Prix before announcing your driver lineup, or certainly at least Kimi. And he said, no, that's not going to happen. And here we are, less than 2 weeks away before the Italian Grand Prix, and we still don't have Mercedes driver lineup yet. So strange things happen.
Yeah.
Strange things happen. But yes, again, to reaffirm your point, I think as well, I think we're going to see Kimi up there. I think it's a European circuit.
Yeah.
We know Kimi's had the real trouble with European circuits so far.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to... No, it's not. They've not been his friends at all. No. Completely not been his friends. But I think he will hopefully come back rejuvenated from the summer break and feel refreshed, and he will show what he's got as well, which we saw at the early part of the season when we thought, yeah, this kid looks good in a car that really wasn't that great, the Mercedes, even though George was doing good results in it, of course, as we've seen. So yeah, we've got to throw in the Mercedes, and then it's a question of who's going to be, because that midfield battle so far has been unreal. Stake have come back into it remarkably. Could Williams be hanging on to that 5th place in the Constructors? Because James Vowles reiterated yet again, just before the summer break, that there is absolutely nothing, zero, coming on that car for the remainder of this season, whereas other teams are going to have little bits and pieces. We know Haas, I think it is. Yes, Haas has got a good upgrade coming around the Austin Grand Prix time. So that's going to give them a boost for the final few Grand Prix. I'm sure Stake have got little bits and pieces that they're going to throw in that car because they're now in that mix for that 5th position. Who saw that one coming?
I have backed them for 5th, by the way. We predicted last week he'll finish 5th, and I've gone all out and backed Stake for 5th.
Pierre Gasly.
It's impossible. It's amazing.
Pierre Gasly in that Alpine constantly pulling up, pulling out remarkable results. So, he's been on the fringes of that top 10 quite a little bit. So yeah, it's the midfield battle in terms of, it's another one of those points as what have we got to look forward to? And that's the thing as well. We can't just singularly focus on the McLaren guys. There is still, if you're, just a general Formula One fan, and yes, you're going to have your favorites. You're going to have your McLaren if you're supporting a team, or if you're going to be a favorite driver, quite naturally. There is still a lot to look forward to over the final 10 Grand Prix of this season. Trying to big it up as much as I can, Nick.
Well, but you're right, though. There are so many reasons to be excited for his last 10 rounds, because there's actually so many storylines throughout the field at the moment. Max Verstappen in particular, and let's discuss him, because I make this, and you can confirm or deny this, I make this probably the first Grand Prix this season where he will likely not face questions about his future. Of course, in Hungary, he committed to Red Bull for 2026, so we know he's not going anywhere, at least for next season. How important do you think that is for Red Bull that they can go into not only Max's home race, but these last 10 races, knowing they've got him for next year, and particularly in Zandvoort, you'd imagine probably shouldn't face questions on his future. The fact that they can actually, probably for the first time this year,
Yeah,
focus purely on the racing. How important is that?
crucial. For Laura Mekies as well, the new Red Bull team principal that took over from Christian Horner in dramatic circumstances, as we know, Laurent replacing Christian just after the British Grand Prix.
Yep.
So for him as well, to know that, he's not got all this noise in the background, um, that's really going to play a big part. You notice now he's got a stable platform on which to work going forward with Max for the remainder of this season. He and Max can work pretty much hand in glove together with, of course, the rest of the team around them quite naturally to do everything it can to keep Red Bull in that fight for second place in the Constructors' Championship. And a lot of people thinking, oh, wow, yeah, second place. But as I've discussed a few times in the past, second place is
Yeah.
crucial for a team like Red Bull. It's a huge chunk of money, folks. It is a massive chunk of money. From first to second to third to fourth, from first to fourth, you're talking somewhere in the region of $35 million around that mark. So for second to fourth, you're talking in the region of somewhere around $25 million. That is, particularly when we're going into this new regulatory era as well. And yes, okay, there's a budget cap with regard to the cars, but nevertheless, there's everything that comes around it. And every cent counts. I'm talking, yes, US currency here because they get paid in dollars, the teams. So every cent counts for all these teams. Every dollar counts. And for a team like Red Bull, the discrepancy between second and fourth is huge. So at least knowing that they've got Max firmly on board to provide them, as I say, with that stability going forward for the second half of the season. And yes, I know we've got the uncertainty around the second driver seat, in particular for 2026, who's going to fill that. But nevertheless, for Laurent Mekies, knowing he's got his number one driver safely secured for the remainder of this season, perfect for him. He'll be happy. They will be happy, and they, as a team, can do everything it can to really challenge Ferrari and Mercedes in particular, while doing all it can quite naturally to still get race wins, pole positions, if it at all can, given McLaren's dominance at the minute. It's going to be going hell for leather to do that over these final 15 weeks. God, I can't believe 15 weeks, mate. Jesus.
And then it's all
I mean,
over for another
about
year.
18 weeks away from Christmas. You realize that, don't you?
That's just depressing. I don't even want to hear that. It feels like Christmas was like it is mental that, 24 races, 14 are done. I just don't. It's days like this where I kind of think, where is time going? Maybe it's because I'm
Yeah,
getting older
I
and
think
time goes fast. I don't know. It's quite scary that,
it doesn't seem that long ago that I was at the pre-season test in
it's
Bahrain.
just
It's
weird.
like time
It's just
flies.
weird.
Time
I mean,
flies
10
when you're
more.
having fun. We're having
It
fun. That's
does.
what we
It
have here
does.
on Racing News
Well, like I
365.
said,
We have
10
fun.
rate 10 races, and that's this regulations period done. And we move on to it's just it's crazy. And I think one thing that is crazy was, of course, Lewis Hamilton's comments in Hungary, calling himself useless. We've discussed that a lot. And it was very much probably the most self-critical he's been at Ferrari, and an interesting time to say that going into the summer break. And for me, at least, I don't know about you, looking ahead to media day on Thursday, it's Lewis that's going to be the most interesting thing for me. Is how he's going to respond to, arguably he's going to face questions about those comments. You'd have to imagine not only how he's going to present himself, is he going to be positive, is he going to be negative after having a few weeks away, but more importantly, how he answers those questions about those comments from Hungary. They're comments, Ian, that aren't going to be forgotten anytime soon. What do you expect to see and hear from Lewis on Thursday? Are we going to hear a positive seven-time world champion?
I'll be surprised if he's anything other than that, to be honest, mate. He will have gone away, totally reset, recharged, he will have done everything that he possibly could have done to surround himself with positivity, with people around him that will do their best to support him. We know he loves being around his nieces and nephews and how much of a positive influence they are on him. We know how much of a positive influence his brother is on him as well. So I'm also sure that he would have got away somewhere just to totally chill. And as I say, if he's anything other than positive on that Thursday, I will be utterly surprised. I'm sure when he sat there in front of the media, be it in the FIA press conference or be it in front of the assembled media inside the Ferrari motorhome, I'm sure he's going to give off a positive persona. And in answering that question with regard to his comments, I'm sure he will look back on those now and think, yeah, I was being honest. This is who I am. And I'm not going to give you anything other than my honest, true self. And for many people, I know they don't get to see or appreciate Lewis Hamilton the way I feel I've got to see him throughout his entire career. My first full-time season in Formula One was Lewis's first full-time season in Formula One back in 2007. I'd done numerous Grand Prix prior to 2007, but that was my first full-time in F1.
Nearly
So
20 years.
I know, mate. Jesus Christ, don't put it like that.
You're
Now
welcome.
you're making me feel old. So I've pretty much been there, seen it, done it, covered every single one of Lewis Hamilton's Grand Prix over these past 18 seasons. And I've got to understand him to a certain extent without truly getting to understand someone when you're not, a friend of that person. But as much as anybody possibly could have done within the environment within which we work. And I've always felt that when I've asked Lewis questions, it's always been relatively honest and straightforward and given good detailed answers. So I've always appreciated Lewis's honesty and forthrightness when I've asked him questions. And as I say, I would be surprised if he's anything other than honest and forthright again on Thursday in whatever forum he will be participating in. But I'm pretty confident we will see a positive Lewis, and I think there will be an about turn in his performance going forward over these next 10 races. I'm almost confident. I'm really confident of it, almost certain of it, should I say. Almost certain, really confident as to how things are going to transpire with Lewis.
Only time will tell. Well, hey.
Oh, how's that cap coming on, Nick? Is it going to be ready for Monza?
It's a secret, but we have to wait and see. Keep tuning into the Racing News 365 podcast to find out. And actually, on that point, for those who are listening or watching this podcast, keep a very, very close sight on all our social media platforms at Racing News 365 because we have got a very special giveaway taking place for the Dutch and Italian Grand Prix. I'm not going to say what, just keep your eyes peeled because
even I'm intrigued because I've been away and I don't know about
cool.
this.
It's pretty cool. I'll tell you after the recording. But yeah, viewers and listeners, it's pretty special. So keep an eye out on the Racing News 365 socials. I want to have a quick look ahead to 2026 and then we're going to look back to 2025 because our final two talking points before doing our predictions were, hey, are kind of linked in one way or another. So, of course, at Racing News 365, we understand that Cadillac has signed Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez for 2026. We're expecting an announcement literally any time. It could be any time this week, it could be next week, but we understand that, yes, it is going to be Bottas and Perez racing for the American outfit next year. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because when Cadillac first got the approval to become the 11th team, initially it was very much them saying that all the rumors were they wanted this ultra experienced driver pairing, and they've got that in Bottas and Perez. We then had a few things that maybe they wanted one half of the garage to be a bit younger, a bit more inexperienced, so they can learn from the experience, kind of somebody they could nurture for a few years. But no, Perez and Bottas, I think our stat man Jake Nichols figured out they've got almost 600 starts between them. That's going to be one of the most experienced on the grid, if not the most experienced. But it's an interesting pairing, isn't it? Because yes, two drivers with bags of talent, but have both been out, obviously, of racing in 2025. Obviously, yes, Valtteri has done some tests for Mercedes as its reserve driver. Checo seemingly is kind of a nothing motorsport, it would seem, unless he's keeping it very secret. It's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see, firstly, if they've still got what it takes to race in F1, but also how they're going to get back up to speed. Because, what are your thoughts on this pairing? It's experience, that they've got that for sure.
Very much so. And as you pointed out, around 600 Grand Prix worth of experience, which is exactly what Cadillac needed. It's in many respects, it's no great surprise that this is the driver pairing that they've gone for. I think I remember saying on a podcast when we were discussing who's going to line up for Cadillac, and we're going back, I don't know, a couple of months or so. And I remember relating a story to you guys, and I was speaking to Graham Loudon and in Miami, and I was having a chat with him, and we were discussing his driver lineup back then. And he asked me, he said, "Who do you think it should be?" And I said straight away, Bottas and Perez. So checks in the post for my or my invoices in the post, Graham, for my services rendered with regard to a consultancy fee. So thank you very much for taking my advice on board. And in fairness, as I say, it's blindingly obvious. Is that too far, perhaps? Blindingly obvious that these guys have been taken on board. For me, there was never ever going to be a point in taking on a rookie driver. And I said that to Graham at the time as well. Why would you take on a rookie driver? You're a brand new team. You're going to be using that first year to get up to speed as much as you possibly can. You do not need a rookie driver in that second seat who's just going to be like pitched in at the deep end and then some. Young driver trying to find his way in F1 with a team that's more than likely going to be at the back of the grid. You know, it's going to be a real hard slog for Cadillac in that first season. We know what it's like for any new team. Graham's been through this ringer before when it was, Marussia, Virgin Racing, whatever moniker, Manor Racing, whatever moniker they came into F1 in that first season. It's not his first rodeo, but at least on this occasion, it is supremely well backed. It has the resources. It's not going to be this struggling, underfunded team as it was back then in the day for Graham in that, as I say, that first rodeo. So at least there's that. It's got good people on board. It's continuing to hire good people. You've only got to look at the website to see the positions that they're advertising for that's still available, actually. Still many positions. So they've still got lots to go through. But I remember speaking to Graham he did a media call just before the British Grand Prix. And he said then that the rate of hire was, I can't remember the exact numbers, so forgive me, folks, remember the exact figures, but the rate of hire was staggering. And they were going to be something close to around certainly 600 by the close of this season. And they were still recruiting, still heavily recruiting to get these positions filled. So that gives you some idea when they're still in that phase of heavily recruiting, that they're still trying to build up the team from within, as to just how difficult it is just going to be to get that car on the grid through testing initially and then on the grid for the Australian Grand Prix for that first weekend in March next year. It's still going to be an awful tough slog for them. And obviously they at least have Valtteri and Sergio, two fantastically experienced drivers who know what's what with the car, who know how to develop a car, who know how to set up a car, giving them the most invaluable feedback that team really will need to cement itself as quickly as possible on the Formula One grid.
I couldn't agree more, but I want to now link this to the final talking point, because going from 2026 back to 2025 and Alpine, because its second seat has been, it's caused so much debate this year, obviously starting off with Jack Doohan. He then got demoted to a reserve role. Franco Colapinto came in, has done not very well, but it's fair to say, and obviously the Dutch Grand Prix is quite a significant one for his, F1 career, basically, because it was obviously Logan Sargent having a shocking Dutch Grand Prix last year, which led to James Vowles making the decision to then bring Franco in from Monza. But Sergio was one of the drivers who was somewhat linked to potentially joining Alpine
and
for
Valtteri.
2026, and Valtteri, which leaves the question, because the big expectation is obviously that the Mercedes power unit is going to probably be, at least for the first few rounds, the power unit to have for 2026, given how good they were when the turbo hybrid era came in 2014, and who are Alpine a customer of? for 2026? Mercedes. And Pierre
Mercedes.
Gasly has already said that he's targeting the world title next
Yeah,
year. That's what Alpine are working towards. When you've got what is likely to be a pretty solid customer team package next year for Alpine, a second seat that seems open as well, and with, Franco and Jack probably both wanting it, there's got to be some other drivers now looking at Alpine thinking, "Hmm, that could be an interesting one." For
yeah,
me, that's the interesting seat now for the rest of the year.
I agree. I could not agree more with you, Nick, because Jack was given his chance, and we've been through this on numerous
Yeah,
podcasts and updates previously. Wrongly, in my opinion, he was ditched after 6 Grand Prix,
agreed.
but, Franco made a heavy play. Sorry, Flavio made a heavy play for Franco over the
Yeah,
winter break, managed to get his man, firmly believed in him. Obviously, Franco comes with considerable sponsorship as well, so that naturally brings itself into the whole business equation for Flavio Briatore, who, was a businessman before he became a Formula One team principal at the end of the day. So he knows what he's talking about with regard to that side of the fence. And Franco, it's not been great, has it? In all honesty, I think that's putting it really mildly. He's not done well, and I know I've been criticised on this podcast previously for speaking ill of Franco, but he's struggled. He really has struggled. So I honestly thought that there was going to be a switch just before the summer break. I thought Jack was going to get another chance to prove himself. I thought Flavio might at least give Jack another shot and say, okay, Franco's not done well for us. Here's your second opportunity. Give us 2 Grand Prix and let's see what you can do. Not happened. Obviously, you've got to assume now that Franco is going to be the man going forward for the rest of this season. You've also got to assume that he has got to do an awful lot to prove himself in the eyes of Flavio Briatore for the rest of this season as well, regardless of that financial package that he comes with all those sponsors on board. You've got to have a competent second driver, because look at what Pierre Gasly has done with that car. For me, Pierre's been one of the drivers of the season, in all honesty, because I feel like we've seen Max do on many of occasion in the Red Bull, particularly last season, towards the second half of it especially. He's pulled performances out of that Alpine that have been above and beyond. It should not have been fighting for qualifying positions in the top 10, fighting for positions in the top 10 on a race day, but nevertheless, Pierre has managed to be there or thereabouts on many occasions. But Alpine has been let down severely by its second driver. So for me, Flavio has got a massive decision to make if Franco does not pull up trees over the second half of this season and prove himself fully worthy of being Pierre Gasly's teammate next season, of being worthy of that second seat at Alpine, regardless of all those sponsors that he might bring on board with him, which, as I say, are huge for a team like Alpine, given all its struggles that it's had, behind the scenes, changing CEO most recently, uh, changing its power unit supply quite obviously, ditching Renault and going to Mercedes. That's huge for that organization. It's seen numerous personnel shifts as well over the years. The number of people that have come and gone out of that team, the revolving door that's been fitted to Enston has been staggering, and it really has to stop for that team to properly function and properly prove itself in Formula One. But it needs a second driver as well to prove himself alongside Pierre.
For those watching this podcast on YouTube, let us know your thoughts in the comments below on the Alpine second seat. Who you think could get it for 2026? Obviously, with Bottas and Perez now at Cadillac, it's interesting who the contenders could be. I guess that's maybe something that we'll find out more of in the coming races. But it is time to end this podcast with our predictions for the Dutch
Yay!
Grand Prix. It's been a while, right? Just to do a quick recap on how the leaderboard
Who's
is
leading, Nick?
looking.
Remind me. What's the leaderboard
Okay,
again, Nick?
right.
Yeah.
All right, here we go, the leaderboard. So, Sam, yes, Sam absolutely, who is last Yes, Sam is
Absolutely
last.
last.
Just repeating
Yes.
myself. He is last, if I've not said that already, on 65 points. The fans are in third on 66. I'm in second on 67, so very, very close for second place. Ian is then, let me do my maths, 25 points ahead on 92. However, there are still a lot of points up for
No.
grabs. So, a reminder to our fans of how our system works. Effectively, we predict who will finish in the top 3 of each race, who will finish in 10th, because why not? Who will claim pole position, the fastest lap, and which team will produce the fastest pit stops. In next Monday's podcast, I'll do a quick reminder on the point scoring system. But anyways, for the predictions, from representing the fans for Zandvoort is Remco from Germany, who is
Thank you,
predicted
Remco.
that Charles, who is predicted, and I like these, there's a good variation to these predictions,
Ooh.
who is predicted that Charles Leclerc will claim pole position, that Lewis Hamilton will finish in third and get his first Ferrari podium. Lando
Wow.
Norris will finish in second. Max Verstappen to win a fourth home race. Yuki Tsunoda to finish 10th. So Sam will like that. Max will claim the fastest lap, and
Oof,
McLaren to claim the fastest pistol. There is a variation of predictions there
that's
from
that's
Remco.
bold.
I like those. It's
Also,
bold,
Oscar
but
Piastri, not even in the top 3,
oh,
so
Oscar.
Oscar's done
Wait,
something different. Yeah.
I'll go for mine first and give you a couple of minutes to think. I am going to go for. I've no idea. I've absolutely no idea. Lando pole,
Okay.
Lando pole, Lando third, Piastri second, Max win. We'll go Oscar fastest lap, Red Bull fastest pit stop, and Carlos Sainz to finish in 10th. It's the
Okay.
weather. It's because because the weather looks so unpredictable. That's really kind of thrown me off because I have no idea
I
based
get that.
on the wet races we've had this year who's actually going to be good because
Yeah.
there's been no consistency. Ian, bring us home. I'll get Sam's predictions during the week. So bring us home, Ian. What do you think for Zandvoort? Good luck.
Okay, yeah, because as you say, who knows with the weather, it could just absolutely throw everything out the window, whatever we might be predicting right now. So, Lando pole, top 3, winner, Lando, second, Oscar, third, Max. I just got to go with I know it's obvious, folks, but it's what's got me to a 25-point lead at the end of the day.
Playing it
So,
safe, basically.
playing it safe, sitting on a fence,
Safe
protecting
and
that
boring.
lead. Well, yeah, I know. I did have it in my head for Lewis third, but going along with what Remco mentioned earlier, because if it is going to be wet, maybe. But I'll go for. I still think Max at his home circuit is going to have an edge, even over Lewis. Fastest pit stop, Red Bull. Fastest lap, I'll go Max. Why not? I'll go Max for fastest lap. And then 10th position, I'm going to go Gabriel Bortoleto at stake because to continue
I
his
like
good
it.
run of form. There we go. Something a little bit different with the 10th place, which is why I do like predicting that 10th place because that is the one that really is the most up in the air prediction because you've got no idea. Whereas obviously top 3 more often than not, we can kind of be there or thereabouts with it.
And of course, for those watching and listening, let us know your predictions in YouTube in the comment section below. So if you're listening, just hop across to YouTube and let us know your thoughts. Ian, amazing stuff as always. This has been the latest episode of the Racing News 365 podcast. We will see you this weekend for the Dutch Grand Prix. See you later.
It's good to be back. Thanks for watching and listening as always, folks. Take care.